This is the biggest thing Ari Emmanuel and Vince McMahon have ever done.
The WWE sale is official, and wrestling as we know it will change forever. Endeavor Holdings CEO Ari Emmanuel announced that the company will acquire a majority 51% stake in WWE, forming a merged company that have the two iconic global brands of the UFC and WWE under one umbrella, creating a $21 billion global empire. The company has been referred to as NewCo and is going to be traded as the New York Stock Exchange term of TKO, so let's just refer to it as TKO going forward. I know, that'll take a while to get used to. But how did it all happen? Why did Vince McMahon, once the emperor of all things sports entertainment, finally give up control of his billion-dollar baby? And what does it mean for the future of the business? Let's begin by meeting the most important characters in the new merged company and who holds what position. Ari Emmanuel, he is now the guy in charge. The CEO of Endeavor, he began his work as a talent agency group lead and is now in the business of holdings and acquiring in a growing media empire. He will remain the CEO of the newly formed TKO company, giving him more power than Vince McMahon. McMahon gave up his majority voting control of WWE, which was the reason he was able to return from the scandals of 2022 in the first place. He is now having an 18% share in TKO and will serve as an executive chairman of the board, with only Ari Emmanuel being above him in standing. Mark Shapiro, the chief operating officer of Endeavor, will be TKO's president, as well as retain the title of chief operating officer. Nick Khan, a name that some wrestling fans have become familiar with. He has extensive experience in the talent agency business, like the people on the Endeavor side, and also brokered billion-dollar deals for WWE for TV rights in the past few years. He is currently the CEO of WWE and now will become the president of WWE and will be heavily involved in the business side of things rather than creative week-to-week storylines on television. Dana White, although he won't have a direct role to play with WWE, he retains his role as the president of the UFC, something that Ari Emmanuel has said, that WWE and UFC will have autonomy and operate separately, even though they're under the same company. When asked about why he was finally willing to sell his majority voting control of WWE, Vince McMahon said, "It's the right time. It's the right time to do the right thing. It's been the next evolution of WWE." McMahon essentially said it would have probably taken him 10 years to achieve what Ari Emmanuel and Endeavor did with the UFC. Now pay attention, because this part is really important. In 2016, Endeavor purchased UFC for $4.1 billion. Today, the value of the company has literally tripled to $12.1 billion. And according to Mark Shapiro, they're planning to follow the UFC playbook. And this is where WWE fans begin to get cold feet. The reality is that Endeavor's primary goal is profitability and increasing the value of their investment. This means that they will do everything they can to go well past the $9.3 billion valuation they gave WWE. Mark Shapiro hinted at turbulent times for WWE, saying across every area you will find, quote, cost synergies, which is nothing but fancy corporate language for saying that they will make some type of cuts to their overall spending, which could affect people that work for the company. Whether this translates to mass layoffs of talent like we had in 2020 and 2021, and also included people that worked off camera for WWE, we can't be sure, but this is the exact reason why WWE stopped being so generous with signing talent once we got into 2023. What is 100% certain is the fact that neither Ari Emmanuel nor Mark Shapiro will influence the creative side of things. Most fans don't seem to care about who the person is in charge as long as they get the product they want, and this is where things begin to get a little bit trickier. We have to circle back to Vince McMahon, who by all purposes is the main character in this entire story. If you were to ask the average WWE fan about this entire saga, the main concern will be about whether or not McMahon has control over creative, or if it still belongs to the much more beloved Triple H. And if you were to believe Vince McMahon himself, whether he will be involved in WWE creative, the answer is yes and also no. He said that for the bigger picture decisions, he will be involved, while he can't get into, quote, the weeds like he used to. While fans heard that, there was some relief, because it meant that there wouldn't be any reports of him tearing up a script at Raw the last minute before and making changes that reflect horribly on television, depending on who you talk to. But then the Raw after WrestleMania came, and it had all the trademarks of a post-2010 Vince McMahon, chaotic, little inconsistency, some underflowing things that just don't flow that well. Yeah, so it was probably not surprising when it was reported that McMahon was the one who was, quote, firmly in charge of things in gorilla position, and that the morale in the WWE locker room went down after months of being in a great place. It's worth noting, this is all debatable. This has kickstarted a new trend on the internet wrestling community. Oh, the IWC, they love to pound their chest when they say Vince Watch, where wrestling media outlets are actively pushing to find out whether or not Vince McMahon is backstage at Raw or SmackDown that given night. As for fans watching WWE television, positively received content is attributed to Triple H. He had to be the one that did this, whereas anything bad is just blamed on Vince McMahon. Yeah, kinda seems like people are just saying whatever they want and then claiming to know something that maybe they don't know. TKO's Chief Operating Officer Mark Shapiro made it clear to point out that Triple H will be sticking around, which means that there is some recognition of how he has positively influenced WWE in this transitional period. And the numbers speak for themselves. WrestleNomics did detail a report on the differences between last year of a Vince McMahon creatively ran WWE and the 8 months since July of 2022 when it was known that Triple H was handling the pencil of WWE. The ratings for Monday Night Raw increased by 4%, where SmackDown ratings increased by 6%. Live event ticket sales can't paint a clearer picture for fan interest that shot up during the Triple H era. SmackDown attendance went up by 14%, while Raw increased a whopping 25%. All of this means that, objectively speaking, WWE is doing better off under the Triple H era, and that's probably the reason why WrestleMania 39 became the highest grossing WrestleMania of all time. But on the outside looking in, Endeavor isn't going to care about a power struggle that everyone wants to get on a message board about between Vince McMahon and Triple H, if there is a power struggle. For them, numbers are king. They're only going to do whatever it takes to maximize WWE's potential revenue. And about 80% of WWE's current revenue comes from media rights. And they're going to look to utilize Endeavor's connections and resources to keep growing that further. This has bigger implications not just for WWE, but for professional wrestling as a whole. We could talk a lot about a WWE UFC crossover, but beyond a short-term ratings pop like Conor McGregor appearing on a Monday Night Raw for a random reason, we can't see it being a regular occurrence. UFC President Dana White has explicitly stated he isn't a fan of a cross-promotion, unless there are millions to be made for himself. It undoubtedly poses a threat to every other major wrestling promotion. Unless the likes of All Elite Wrestling step up their game, the harsh reality is that the gap between number 1, WWE, and number 2, AEW, will continue to grow as Ari Emmanuel's Endeavor pushes for an aggressive expansion. After the announcement that AEW will be hosting All In at the iconic Wembley Stadium in the UK, it's clear that the signs have reached Tony Khan, and he isn't interested in just lying down and settling for second place. Ultimately, there are two sides to this, a good side and a bad side. The bad side is that WWE will likely to continue to be stringent in treating its wrestlers like independent contractors, and may not necessarily offer lucrative salaries or cushy deals, even if a wrestler has the option of jumping ship to AEW. A growing gap between WWE and AEW could also be dangerous because nobody will bat an eye about WWE being a monopoly, quote-unquote, as long as the creative product is seen as satisfactory. There's also the possibility of Endeavor following the UFC model, which currently means you'd have to pay for a premium price streaming service like ESPN Plus and an additional $80 or so, depending on where you are, to buy a premium live event. But if the reports are to be believed, Endeavor isn't planning to go down that route, so you can breathe a sigh of relief. And the good side is still very good. Endeavor being in charge means that we could re-enter an age where wrestling is seen as mainstream again, even though it is pretty mainstream right now. I was at WrestleMania. While it may never reach the high levels of the early 2000s, the Attitude Era, we could see another golden age with renewed fan interest, expansion across the world. One can only hope that if a new fan likes WWE and pro wrestling in general, they will also turn towards other promotions, which will benefit the entire wrestling landscape. For more videos like this, subscribe to Sportskeeda Wrestling and turn your notifications on so you know we drop content just like this. What do you think of Endeavor buying a controlling interest in WWE? Get into the comments below.